Okay, so welcome to our January 27th new grantee staff transition committee today. Kind of a smaller group today, but that's okay. I'm assuming that there's still probably a lot of sickness that's happening in the schools, and I'm also fully aware that there is a training that's happening at one of our bigger AEAs that's taking out some of our attendees today, but we'll go ahead and do that. So the topic, excuse me, our topic for discussion today is going to be staff recruitment and retention. And I thought I would kick us off with just a fun little exercise, trip down memory lane, so to speak. And I don't mean to sound negative when I say this, but I feel like everybody always asks, like, what was your best job or your favorite job? But I'd like to just start us off by asking, what was the worst job you ever had? And I mean, we can talk about like middle school, high school, or last week. I don't know. No, I hope it wasn't last week. I know it's not, because everybody kind of has the passion for the things that you do. But who would like to start us off? And again, just your name, the site you're at, and then, yeah, what was the worst job you ever did?
I can start if you want.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki.
So I'm Nikki Clausen in the Council Bluffs School District. I guess a lot of my jobs have always stemmed around kids, but I would say the worst job I've ever had, it was actually my first job. My parents used to bowl in a bowling league with some friends, and so I had to babysit their friend's child every Friday night, and she was just a brat. So, my sister and I would take turns. My sister's a couple years older than me, and we actually would go together, and then we would split the money in it. And she was not that every only child are brats, but for the record, she was an only child. But yeah, it was just every Friday night for like 4 months. So that was probably my worst job I've ever had, which that was my first job. So I was probably like 12. So they obviously got better as they went along.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I needed a laugh today. So,
sure.
All right. Next, again, your name, your site, and the worst job you've ever had.
I can go next. This is Colleen Gould from Neil Armstrong's Rocket Academy program in Bettendorf. And I would have to say something similar to that too. It was like babysitting job as well, but it was all summer long, and it was twin boys that I had to entertain for a while, and it was a lot of work, and they weren't always on their best behavior. So it was a lot to do.
Oh, literally double trouble there, huh, Colleen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Stephanie or Fiona? Fiona, you just unmuted. Do you mind?
No problem. I'm Fiona Top. I'm from the Burlington site. I run the after school program there. And again, I love children, so I feel bad saying babysitting, but it was the summer and I had agreed to babysit for a family of 4 kids, and I hadn't asked the price. And so they hadn't mentioned. And so they paid me $1 per kid. And if a kid was gone, they wouldn't pay me for that kid. And I was in high school, so I drove somewhere I wasn't supposed to, flipped my car, so totaled it, and my parents were like, well, you agreed. And my dad went out and like pumped up like a mountain bike, and it was 8 miles away, so I had to ride my bike to their house every morning for like $4 an hour. And I was saving up for a new car at $4 an hour. It was a good life lesson on asking about, wages and accommodations prior to agreeing, and also not driving fast on gravel. So.
Oh, Fiona, I have only known you for a short amount of time, but I love the fact that you find the silver lining in everything. So, contract negotiation, that's what we've learned.
Yep. So. At like 16, a good life lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, Stephanie.
Fiona, I'm glad you went before me, because I was having trouble thinking of one, because I'm also kind of a silver lining, like, well, there were some crappy jobs, but I got something out of all of them. Money was one of them, but there was, when I was about that age too, 16, I was hired by a tutoring company to do after school tutoring. And similar thing is that they just kind of had me start working, and I didn't really ask about a contract or anything. And then after more than a month of working a couple times a week tutoring kids, I find out that I'm actually volunteering rather than getting paid. So
Oh,
lesson
man.
learned on the contract and agreement, knowing what you're getting into.
Yeah, the fine print, it's kind of important sometimes, isn't it? So, oh gosh. Vic, do you want to join us?
Sure. My worst job was working downtown Detroit at a hotel. I was making a whopping $3.25 an hour as a dishwasher. And it was in the summer. They had no air conditioning. They didn't even have a fan. And they had this big machine that was washing the dishes, and just, heat and humidity. It must have been 100 degrees in there. And I'm loading the dishes in there, and I lasted a couple of days. Now, I went from that to selling Good Humor ice cream. And I love that job. And I used to, have a thing where every kid would get something, and I'd get these popsicles, and I'd buy them out of my own pocket. And, some of these kids they'd give me a penny. What can I get? And I'd give them a popsicle. Some kids would give me a marble.
Yeah.
Every kid got something, when the ice cream man came by. And so, you don't have to stick it out in a job that's miserable. Find something better, because there's always choices out there in this world.
Vic, I could totally see you being an ice cream truck guy yet again in your retirement age. So,
I don't have Good Humor anymore. I'm gonna have to buy my own truck.
I know, right? So, all right. And then I will go last. Crystal Hall with the Iowa After School Alliance for at least a couple more days. I think the worst job I ever had is I worked for about 6 months at a fertilizer company because I had bills to pay. And again, like you take a job because you needed a job, right? So the part that I enjoyed was, I mean, obviously I'm a people person, right? So swapping stories with farmers and things of that nature, great. But the actual fertilizer product in and of itself, not so good, so I felt like I just habitually stunk for 6 months. And it was actually kind of a funny thing is I was also umpiring at night. So I went up to the school in my local community and to pick up my umpiring check. And I'm in a t-shirt and shorts, and I just my hair's in a ponytail and no makeup. That's back when I wore makeup and things like that. And as I was picking up my check, the superintendent came out and said, "Didn't you go to school for, I have this position." And I literally interviewed for a position at the school in a ratty old t-shirt, pair of gym shorts, and my umpiring gear over my shoulder, coming from work smelling like fertilizer. And as we say, the rest is history, right? So thank you for that. I enjoyed that a lot. We really needed a laugh, I think, on this Thursday morning. So, okay, so I want to start with just kind of a question, and I'm just going to open this up. So about, I would say, 3 to 6 months ago, give or take, we were hearing stories from the field that it was hard for people to get staffing or to keep staffing. And then we kind of heard that people were making adjustments in their staffing patterns, but then you would maybe come up into a problem where maybe you didn't have the right ratios because half of your staff was sick or half of your staff was exceeding work hour restrictions and things of that nature. Can I just do a general check-in with people just to see where are you at with your staffing right now? How are things feeling? How are they looking? For this kind of moment in time?
Well, I feel like at my program here, we have a good team here that we really all work together, and they've been here at least one of them's been here a few years with me, and the other two one joined just last year and the other has been here a couple of years too, but we all get along really well and the kids just love them. And I think we're really lucky where I'm at with the people that I have. So we've had in the past some of those issues too, like we've had people either having to move out or weren't showing up for work. So we had to find some new people, but the people we have now, I feel like are a great team. We really work well.
Good. That's good to hear, Colleen. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Anybody else kind of where you're at with your staffing right now?
In Council Bluffs,
we
out of our 10
ended up
sites, oh,
combining.
sorry. Was somebody else talking?
Sorry, Fiona, if you don't mind, we'll have Nikki go and then I'll shoot it over to you, okay? So Nikki, go ahead.
So out of our 10 sites, I would say nine of them are fully staffed. Meaning that they're on hire. I wouldn't say they always come to work, but I think the problem that we run into is that we've got morning programs at every single one of our elementary schools. And so like we only have 5 full-time staff. So one of us is always covering, I feel like, a morning club, which is totally fine. I mean, they're all based on literacy and we do a lot of art projects and things. And I mean, me being a former teacher, I can fill in anytime, but my other full-time staff, they've never taught. So it's, trying to get them, I usually will tag team it with them and say, we can fake it to make it for an hour. It's fine. And then our afternoon staff, we're just dealing with probably what everybody else is with COVID and stomach flu and regular flu. So I feel like somebody's always gone and you just have to roll with it at this point and just do what you can.
Yeah. And I assume the absences are also for the kids too, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of, and then that comes into play with like our snack distribution. We partner with the school district and they send our snacks to our schools every day. And then we send back what we don't use. Well, we try not to send a lot back, but we are getting to the point where we're like, we don't know who's going to show up today as far as the kids. So they might send 85 snacks and we might send 48 back. And they're like, why are you sending more than 50% snacks back? It's like, well, we can't predict who's going to show up. So that's kind of frustrating for them, but it's really out of our hands.
Yeah, that is frustrating. So,
Yeah.
okay, thanks for that. Fiona, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say kind of similar, like when I look at how many staff I have hired and how many are technically working for me, I'm like, I should be so good to go. But then every night there's just call-ins and sickness and I think it's a combination of like genuine sickness and then burnout. Because I have some people who it's like, this is like your 3rd time with COVID. Is it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a combination of that. And then I have quite a few people where I'm like, you're just kind of phoning it in. And like, you're a body and you're here. But you clearly don't have a passion to be here. So yeah.
Yeah. And again, I thank you for that. I think that's also kind of what we're hearing pretty commonly is, again, there's genuine sick, there's burnout sick, there's just a warm body, and it just all kind of adds up, and it does make you kind of wonder or question if you are serving youth to the best of your ability then, because I think the answer is probably no in some regards, but again, you do the best you can with what you have. So now, Stephanie, you're a little bit different, of course, because you're a summer program only, but is there like any insight that you have just kind of into this general question?
That sounds exactly the same as what school districts are dealing with in general. It's just every day is people calling in sick, so lots and lots of absences. I feel like our summer program staff are, they really want to be there, and so they tend to be very committed. but who knows what this year will bring. So I think we do have solid staff that come back every year. But illness is unpredictable, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have something that I want to share with you, and I'm hoping that this isn't brand new to anybody on the call today. But if it is, we'll go ahead and take a look at it. I also just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is a resource that you can access. So I want to talk it through, but then I also just want to point out some differences or kind of in this COVID world changes, and maybe we can talk through these then as a group. So what I'm sharing with you now is the Iowa After School Alliance website. If you go to iowaafterschoolалliance.org and then click on this OST in Iowa tab, starting and supporting a program is where I'm at. So this is our Iowa After School Alliance After School in a Box toolkit. This was put together in early 2020. No, 2021, sorry, lost track of my years there for a moment. And it's really designed to be kind of a twofold document. So the first way that we were hoping that sites would use this is if this is a brand new site, maybe you've never had an after school program before, an out of school time program before, they could access this guide and use it to help kind of build the framework around their after school program. So that's kind of one way. The other way, though, that we were hoping that sites would be able to use this is to take individual sections of this and really kind of think about internal professional development, training, and support for your staff. So a couple of logistical things, and then I'll move on to where kind of the meat of what I wanted to talk about today. So first and foremost, you can download the full document right here at the very top of this. This is a 209-page document, though, so just be aware of that. So you are absolutely free to do that. You can print it, you can save it to your desktop, you can bookmark this and come back to it continuously if you'd like to do that. But then I also want to point out to you that we have it broken down by individual sections that you can choose to pull out just a specific section of these. The toolkit is really designed to have lots of templates, samples, things that you can take and modify and make your own. And then this is also designed to be a living document. So it will be continuously updated, new materials, new information as things kind of progress with this. One very quick example of that is the Iowa After School Alliance is actually currently in the process of revising our program quality standards to have more of a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. So when those are finally approved, which I believe will happen in March, we'll make sure that those get onto this website and then incorporated into the toolkit. So that's an example of what I mean by this living document. So you'll see that when we look at our individual sections here, we have everything from establishing your program to budget, staffing and volunteer considerations, community partnerships, just really taking a look at that comprehensive approach about what makes a quality after school program great. And then finally down here, we have several resources that are just connected by link. So you can grab those. You can also find these throughout the entire document as well. So just be aware of that list. And the section that I would like to specifically look at today, let me make sure that you guys can see this on your screen here. All right, so the section that I wanted us to look at today, if I can get to my tab. Oh, I'm sorry, give me 1 second, folks. My screen is too big, so I'm gonna stop share for just a moment. Technology, isn't it great? Okay, so the section that I would like to focus on today is staffing and volunteer considerations. Can everybody see this particular section okay on your screen? Okay, great, thanks, Steph. All right, or Stephanie, sorry, I went super casual there on you for a moment. So this particular section is only 10 pages. You can see that up here to navigate. Here's your scroll side. A couple of features I want to point out to you with every particular section, just to, if this is a new document to you, that you'll be able to navigate a little bit better. We have kind of an introductory page about what this section is about, maybe some highlights. And then in these gray boxes, we have the ability to navigate to specific tools or sections for further discussion. So let me just, I'm going to come down here. So here is a quick example of a sample job description for an after-school program site facilitator. And so if you go to that and you're like, oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do, in each of these corners is this kind of gray triangle area where it says back to section resources. If you click on that, it'll take you back up. Another thing that you'll find is if it's a template, and I'm not remembering if this particular section has a template. I don't think it does, but if we would have a template that you could download and fill yourself, there would be kind of a gray arrow here as well. And you could click on that button, and then that would take you to the document that would come to you as either a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet that you could take then and modify to be your own. So just a couple of notes of interest there. Okay, so most of you, I feel like I'm going to preach to the choir just a little bit here, but I want to point out a few things about this particular section. So when you're thinking about recruiting for staff, many of you are thinking about gearing up for summer. You'll be looking at perhaps a slightly different employee pool for your summer programming and so on and so forth. You might want to consider perusing the staff recruitment section. So in here, what we're really wanting to have people think about is, where do you find your high quality staff? And then how can you get these people from these high quality sources and incorporate them into your program in a seamless way? So, right out of the gate, and many of you do this already, thinking about your paraeducators or associates, they're probably on a school year contract. They would perhaps like to supplement their income for summer. So that might be a good pool of people to have join your program. Some of these tips or tricks in here are maybe not as applicable right now because of COVID. So for example, I don't know, I think I've maybe heard of maybe one in-person job fair that's occurred. But I also know too that there's been several virtual job fairs. So thinking about tapping into those types of resources. Obviously, colleges and universities can be a really good source for you. When I was running programming back prior to taking this role with the Alliance, we had fantastic results in getting college students connected to our program through work study or internship programs. So if that's something that's interesting to you, I'm happy to maybe do a discussion with you offline regarding how we made that happen. But again, when you have a person who has that passion or interest in working with kids, working with education, working in the field of social work or something like that, they could be a wonderful resource for you. Also, don't discount organizations that provide general service to your communities. So we're talking Kiwanis, Lions, Rotary, even your Red Hats, the groups of that nature. We had a pretty successful partnership with a retiree program that was able to come in and do some homework help and assistance. And then we actually even had a group that came in and taught the kids how to knit, so that was kind of a neat little element that came into play. So thinking about, what do you have at your disposal and how might you recruit these people to come into the fold?
Hey, Crystal.
Yeah.
Let me chime in on this because right now we're having a really tough time. Everyone is looking for staff, but thinking outside of the box, let me give an example. Des Moines, what they did is they created a blended position where somebody might work with a community group part-time and work for the schools part-time, and then they would be working full-time, but with two different people. And, you know, that's been one of our problems with after schools because it's been a part-time job. And so maybe if you work with community groups and schools getting together on this, you might be able to offer people full-time employment that's split between, you know, two employers and be able to attract some more staff. So it's kind of out of the box thinking, but it is possible, and Des Moines, I know, is doing it. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. And actually, Vic, I was planning to address that concept under the retaining staff, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So
Okay.
just jumping the gun a little bit there. It's
Well,
no
and
big deal.
you know, I mentioned that Des Moines is doing it, so they could reach out to them, you know, if they wanted more information.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
This is kind of opposite too, but I have found a lot more luck hiring people for like a day a week. Like,
yes.
people can commit to like, I can do 1 day a week. And it's made it kind of a logistical nightmare scheduling wise, but it's been helpful.
Yeah. And Fiona, I'm glad you brought that up too, because again, that was something else that I was going to bring up as part of discussion today. So I kind of skipped over the background check section here. I mean, you're all in some way, shape, or form connected with the school district. So this is just a process and procedure type thing for you, of course. However, if you have questions about background checks, we can certainly talk through that. I wanted to maybe focus a little bit more on this retaining staff discussion. And in thinking about much of the narrative that you see on your screen is kind of for a normal world is what I would say. So take this with kind of that in mind, and then we can talk about some of these other strategies that people have implemented with some pretty good success. So prior to the pandemic, at least, and I still think that there's probably elements of truth to this too. One of the most common reasons that employees leave a job is just they don't feel as connected to the job, to the workplace, to the work, and so on and so forth. And a lot of that just comes down to team building. There are very few jobs in this field where you can sit in a cubicle and just mind your own business for 8 hours a day, right? It's just, we're just not that type of a field. So when we're thinking about recruiting people to come into your team and thinking about how then once we get them in the door, how do we keep them? I guess I would like to know, like, what are some strategies that you have all done in the past? Like, how do you build that sense of team? How do you make them feel welcome? How do you meet their needs as an employee? And just feel free to unmute, or if you are unable to unmute, maybe drop something in the chat.
I would, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think it's just you, Nikki. Go ahead.
Okay. I would say, because this is my 7th year at Council Bluffs, and so I started out as a coordinator, and when I was a coordinator, we did a lot of just little staff appreciation things. And this isn't just for 21st century staff, but we would do it for the schools that we're in too, because we do have a lot of teachers that lead clubs and things like that. So, you know, like once a month, we made it a point to do something for staff, and it doesn't have to be huge. It could be as simple as, you know, Panera Bagels one morning, or just little things in the mailboxes at work. And then specifically for our 21st century staff, we always do, you know, some like around the holidays, we did, you know, little presents and things like that. But I think as our coordinators, I think they do a good job of just being present, like asking them, hey, do you need some extra hands on Tuesday? I know you've got, you know, 5 clubs as opposed to Wednesday when you have 3. So we're really good about just making those connections. And honestly, now being the director, I still have all of my site facilitators that I had when I was the coordinator. So I reach out to those girls all the time. They're basically family. I mean, we've known each other for 7 years. And so I have a meeting with one of them today, just nothing about work, just to catch up on life. And so I think it's just being present is really a big deal, especially right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So what are some other things that people do? Sorry, I think I interrupted somebody there. Okay, that's okay. Think about this. And again, feel free to unmute and hop in. A couple of just pretty quick suggestions. Having frequent, ongoing, but valuable communication. I think that that is something that really helps build that sense of team. Not necessarily meeting for the sake of meeting, of course, but just knowing that you have a 15-minute check-in every Monday at 8 or whatever, you know, those types of things. That can really kind of build that sense of camaraderie. Nikki alluded to this too. It doesn't always have to be stuff. Sometimes it's even just something as simple as like that quick email. Hey, I was at this site today. I saw you doing a great job. You're a rock star. Fantastic. You know, those types of things can really help too. Now, one thing that I want to bring up, because it came up a little bit earlier in our discussion too, was in thinking about skill set, because when it comes down to brass tacks, right? As supervisors, as managers, as program leaders, or even as supportive roles in those positions, ultimately our job is to make sure that that employee feels fully supported and developed to take it to the next level. So maybe that next level is with you. Hopefully it's with you, because that's where your retention comes in, right? But we also need to recognize that by developing high quality staff for future roles, we're still doing a greater good for kids across the state, the county, the nation, the whatever, you know. So you can also kind of think to yourself, you know, give yourself pats on the back if you have people excel to different programs or positions and whatnot, because that truly means that you have done everything that you can do as a manager or a supervisor to get them to where they can be as successful as possible as a person. And sometimes that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, because again, it seems like perhaps maybe you're doing your job so well that your staff are all leaving you. But in the larger scheme of things, we know that they'll continue to do good things for kids. I do want to talk about this third bullet really quickly here, this high quality onboarding system. I do think that this is probably a tip that is often overlooked. I have been in jobs where the onboarding system has taken days or even possibly weeks. And I have been at jobs where they're like, well, here's your desk, good luck, you know? So in thinking about how you bring a person into the fold, you know, that phrase about first impressions matter, you know, this is the same thing for your onboarding. If you can incorporate an onboarding system that doesn't just take care of the business, because I mean, we all know that you have to fill out your W-9 forms and all of that fun stuff, right? But how can you also incorporate immediately from the get-go that sense of team into your onboarding? And I've seen this happen a couple of different ways. So first and foremost, in just exactly what I mentioned, you know, having those team huddles, having those regular check-ins and staff meetings. I've also immediately have seen people, there's like a text message group or some other type of communication device where you just immediately get in and somebody drops in some type of a funny meme or some kind of a welcome message or something like that. Those can be really highly effective. Another thing that you might want to consider or think about that I've seen it that people have done with really high levels of success are providing kind of that one-on-one support or mentor. And ultimately, that person should not be you as the supervisor or project director. So putting that new hire with somebody on the site who's working directly with the program, directly with the kids, and asking them to be kind of that, you know, buddy, that onboarding buddy, to help with the things that you're just not going to be as well versed in, or maybe you'll forget about. And this seems so silly, but I distinctly remember taking a job when I was back in college, and I was on the job for a week before I knew where the employee lounge was. that's kind of unacceptable, right? So in thinking about, using that mentor or that buddy to make them feel as part of the team, I think can be really important. So, all right. Any questions about retaining staff kind of in that traditional lens? Okay, so now let's switch gears and think about how we retain staff during COVID. Because this is a whole other shebang now, isn't it? I mean, I don't think anybody could have planned for this. I don't know as if there has ever been anything that's happened like this in the future. So let's just kind of brainstorm some ideas about what people have done. And I see that, Fiona, you made a comment in here that you're a little bit unsure about retention because it's your first year. And I get that, so, but I'm wondering, and I don't mean to call you to the middle of the floor, but have you been able to do anything, because you have these situations where people are, burnt out and sick or possibly sick, and, like, have you done anything to kind of think about longer term retention with your staff right now as it pertains to COVID?
So I don't know if it's necessarily COVID pertaining, but I have some younger staff and just helping them just with life. So I think life has been stressful. So like we have a truck, so we help one move. A few of them are in college, so like they send me their papers and I edit them. Just like little things like that. Or like I have one staff and she was out for knee surgery, so I sent her, a get well card, and
Yeah.
she just mentioned, oh, that really mattered, and like you care, and so my hope is that, oh, you care, I'll come back and work for you.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a good strategy, right? I mean, again, especially if we think about people leave because they don't feel connected, they don't feel part of things. If they feel valued, they're more than likely going to stick around for you, right? So what are some other things that people have tried in this strange COVID world that we live in now? Anyone?
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, yeah, okay. Welcome back, Nikki.
Sorry.
So what we were talking about now is if anybody has come up with any strategies for retaining staff during this strange COVID world. And Fiona was just saying, she's done some kind of like personal outreach to some people. She had a staff who was out with knee surgery. She sent her a get well card, things like that, just making people feel appreciated, making them feel special or wanted. So is there anything that you've done maybe differently because of the pandemic?
I'll chime in. One other thing that we did a little different this year, and it was not the pandemic, it was like the floors were getting waxed. But our back to school conference and stuff that we normally have, we did it a little bit more, like it was still SEL, but it was a little bit more focused on the staff's SEO. And then we actually partnered with a local church that I go to. And so I just said, hey, can I host it here instead? And it was carpeted and there were squishy chairs and we had coffee and food. And a lot of people have just commented, oh, that was so nice. It didn't feel like a meeting so much.
Yeah.
So
yeah, great point. Great point. So, all right. Anybody else want to chime in? So this is where strategies, and again, I'm sure if there are HR people on the call, they would be like, just be quiet, Crystal. But this is where strategies like your dual positions, your hiring for short-term projects, or even things like 1 day a week or 2 days a week type of thing. I think you'll see that there are a lot of not just schools or people in this kind of education out of school time world that are happening, but even just in the regular business or work world. In fact, there was an article that came across my email here a couple weeks ago, and it was talking about how kind of that freelance mentality has really led to astronomical percentage increases when it comes to company productivity and things of that nature. So I think if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we don't necessarily have to have such a rigid, like 9 to 5 work day, 3 to 6 after school. Now, after saying that, of course, you still have to have your requirements for 21st century programming and things of that nature. But I think that it's allowed us to think in terms of flexibility about how this happens. Vic has said multiple times, thinking about Saturday offerings or Saturday school, and that's another level of flexibility. Shani Ford from Davenport Schools, she provided what I thought was a really great example too of another way that they've accommodated their staff during this time. So in her situation, she's part of a management team with 3 other individuals, and they cycle through their program sites, and they just give their site director a day off. So ABC site, you look like you're doing a fantastic job, take Friday off. And then the next week they're at DEF site and, hey, hang in there, things are tough right now. How do you feel about having Tuesday off or whatever, So they've kind of implemented that strategy then where their administration team starts to do the covering for more of the direct service team. And that seems to be pretty effective for them. Has anybody else tried anything, or do you have any other examples that we might want to think about when we're thinking about staff recruitment and or retention? Oh, Colleen had to leave. They're having a shelter drill. Awesome. Okay. All right. So that was all I really had planned today. Thank you for being a part of the discussion. I appreciate people chiming in with some of these tips or hints or techniques. We'll make this recording available. If there was anything on here that you want to go back and reference, it will be living on our iowa21cclc.com website. You go to the committees tab, you'll see new grantee staff transition committee, and you'll find the recording there. We'll also progress. Again, even though I'm leaving, this committee will still be alive and well, so to speak. The interim contact for during my departure will be Brittany Applegate. Some of you maybe know her as Brittany Samuelson. She was married last fall, so she does have that new name. She'll be helping with the coordination of these committees and the content and delivery. Your presenter for next month's meeting is going to be our one and only Vic Jarris, who's going to be going through kind of some budget information with you and letting you know some of those things that come with running the program and what direct service staff may ask regarding budgets and allowable expenses and so on and so forth. So that will be our topic for the month of February. And I just want to take a quick moment here too and just say that I have really enjoyed spending time with each and every one of you, particularly as it pertains to this committee. Stephanie, I know this is your first call, so thanks for joining us today. But I imagine I'll see you very soon in the future with us both being located physically in Cedar Rapids and moving forward. So yeah, and Vic dropped his contact information, his email and cell phone into the chat too. And I hope that everybody has that information, but we'll do that. So before I wrap it up, I just want to pause one more time for questions.
Thank you for the wonderful job you've done.
Yeah, thanks, Vic. I really appreciate that. Any other thoughts or questions before we end the call today? So I hope that everybody either, thought about a new place to do some recruiting of staff or maybe a new tip or technique. Sorry, I can't talk all of a sudden. A new tip or technique for retaining your staff, but just hang in there. Hopefully this pandemic won't last forever. Although I feel like we've been saying that now for 2 years. So So best of luck, everyone. And with that being said, we'll go ahead and stop the recording and we'll end the call.